Hello, I'm Jory Bernhardt, and welcome to this episode of Postcards Plates. Today, I'm excited to welcome Ben Kaplan, Director of Education at YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. He directs programs that teach Jewish history and culture to a broad audience and makes it a point to speak Yiddish every day. He is here to discuss his program, A Seat at the Table, A Journey into Jewish Food. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Jory. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit more about YIVO. Tell us a little bit more about A Seat at the Table, A Journey into Jewish Food.
So YIVO is a library and archive. We were founded in 1925 in Eastern Europe and made the transition to New York. We have over 23 million archival documents, all kinds of objects, anything you can imagine, really, over 400,000 volumes of books. And we specialize in the history and culture and the legacy of Ashkenazi Jewry. So the whole history of Jews in Eastern Europe, in Russia, all across the map, and in many diasporas. And A Seat at the Table is one of our many online classes. It's our latest online class, and it focuses on the history of Ashkenazi Jewish food, from its very origins to its development in Eastern Europe, and then its journey into America primarily, but looking at many different locales, and what that food story can teach us about Jewish history and culture. So the class features videos with scholars, cookbook authors, we have cooking demonstrations in the class, we have free downloadable recipes, and hundreds of archival objects from YIVO's archives that really tell the story firsthand.
It's incredible to have such a wealth of resources and knowledge and pictures and documentation, a living museum, all accessible online, which is a really great resource, especially when we have a little bit more time to spend on the internet and maybe we want to delve into our family's histories a little bit deeper. So how does this program, obviously we're talking about food, how does this program showcase the diversity of Ashkenazi Jewish food and a lot of the traditions and the history surrounding it? And also, why is it important to delve deeper into these topics?
Yeah, so well, when we talk about diversity of Jewish food, there's so many different things we can talk about, different aspects. We can talk about geographic diversity, right? So Ashkenazi Jewish food is even a question that scholars debate. Is there even one Ashkenazi Jewish food? Can you even say it's one cuisine, or is it a diversity of cuisines that kind of loosely fit together under an umbrella? So you have Ashkenazi food that's in Poland and in Lithuania, or originates there, and many different countries across Eastern Europe. And of course, in every location, what you discover is that the recipes are slightly different. It's cooked in a slightly different way. There's a tradition that is particular to that place, to that geography. The ingredients will be different, the methods, and so on. There's so much that's connected to Jewish tradition, even though you could say, okay, Jewish Polish food is very similar, has many similarities to Polish food, right? Of course, because they're in the same location. But there are certain things, like if you take the tradition of cholent, which is so deeply tied to Shabbat, to Shabbos, you don't have that in other cultures that you have. I mean, yes, every culture has a stew they make in a certain way, but there's a very particular way that Eastern European Jews and Jews elsewhere, Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, make cholent because of the prohibition that you can't, use any kind of energy, on Shabbat. So there's this wonderful image from our archives of people carrying cholent pots. And it was this ritual, some of you watching might be familiar. Traditionally, you would have a communal oven, and everyone would prepare their cholent at home, and they would carry the cholent pots to the oven, and they put it in there, leave it overnight, over Shabbos, and then you send your kids over or whomever to pick up your cholent pot, and there's a flavor that's so distinctive from that stew, that cholent cooking overnight in that particular way, in that communal oven, that is very distinctive of Jewish food. And so the way in which the religion, all kinds of Jewish traditions intersect with the many different locations, places Jewish people settled and made lives and homes, is what marks this kind of distinctive Jewish foodway. And we wanted to do this class to present the history in a way that would really make it come to life for people. So we have folks, thousands of people around the world, have been taking our class the past couple of months, and we get feedback from folks that when you're cooking and you're watching these lectures and you're learning about the history, it's a very special thing to be living that history and carrying on that living tradition and discovering the wisdom in the food way.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, this picture that you're referencing of the pots of cholent, I shared that with my students last year as we were talking about the diversity of Jews around the world. One week we tried Sephardic Adafina, so the Sephardic style cholent, and then we compared it next week to Ashkenazi style cholent. And I showed this picture, and I was like, think about it. If it was back in the like the really old days, and you didn't have an oven in your home, and you couldn't cook or make food over Shabbat, what would you do? Right. And it was just this like light bulb moment of this communal bakery of where you left your cholent pot. So it was a very powerful image to share.
Absolutely. It's so true that food is a language, and it is always telling, it sounds cliche, but it's always telling a story, wherever it is. And what we're trying to show is that the food evolves as Jews experience different things throughout history: immigration, assimilation, urbanization, when they move from Städtlach, these small towns into cities, it changes. And when they move into, they come to America, or they come to South Africa or Australia or South America, wherever, it's constantly changing, it's constantly adapting. So whenever you see, an archival image or a recipe or a cookbook from a particular time, there's so much to learn about in terms of what's the story being told at that particular moment in Jewish history.
Yeah, absolutely. And another example that I can think of is, as you're saying, is people, when they moved from the shtetls to the city, for example, hamantaschen used to be made with a yeasted dough. And then as you moved to the city and you had the availability of commercial leavening agents and things could go faster, just the shift from that too. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've been talking about this a little bit, but a little bit of an overview. So as people came from Eastern Europe and they arrived in America, what was the Jewish experience of food, and how is that transformed over time?
So there's this, stereotype that Ashkenazi Jewish food has. Oh, it's brown, it's dull, it gives you heartburn, it's very heavy. And one of the things we really want to dive into is this notion that originally it was seasonal, it was tied to tradition, it was tied to particular landscapes. So when you track the history, you see that through these processes, some of which are very challenging, very brutal, in certain respects, you have, the immigrant experience, for example, changes the food. So people come over, many of them come over with very little money. They can't afford to buy certain ingredients. They don't have access to certain local produce or seasonal vegetables or the things they had in the old country, right? So the food kind of gets whittled down in some immigrant experiences. And what we've been doing today, and you see there are a lot of young people rediscovering these foods and reimagining them, and going back to these original recipes and trying to understand what was it like to cook this recipe in Poland or Lithuania or Russia or wherever, and how do we understand the richness of the cuisine. And you also see, when you come to America or elsewhere, the process of assimilation, everyone wants to be American, right? So they want to speak English, they stop speaking Yiddish, or they stop or whatever. And it's true of so many immigrant groups, right? And you lose a lot of the texture and the richness of the foodway as now I'm just eating American food, or there's a lot there's a lot that's exciting about food evolving, and, when you assimilate, you adopt new flavors, and but also there's this element of loss, I think, in every immigrant experience, that any culture, as you dive into it, you see what you can reclaim.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons, again, when I do this project, what makes your project so interesting, and having the classes, and also having the ability to recreate these recipes at home as you're going through that, because that food is tied to memories, and building that, you can have a conversation that maybe the gefilte fish you're making at home, or the children you're making at home, you remember a great grandparent telling you a recipe, and then that starts a conversation with your family of, well, what did it look like back then, and how are we making it now, and preserving your own family's history too.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many people, and I've experienced this myself, you think the history is really far away. It's in a book somewhere. It's in a black and white photo, and it's really not as far away as you think. It's maybe one recipe, one page of a history book away from being totally opened up again, and you being able, especially with food, to be able to just go into your kitchen, cook the recipe, give it a try. It's okay if you mess it up, and see what you discover when you can smell what it smells like, and see these different elements come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all about the program. I have a quick few fun questions for you, if you're ready for a quick fun questions.
I'm ready.
Okay, cool. Stretch. All right, what is your favorite? There you go. Yep, stretch. What is your favorite Jewish food, either served on a holiday or served on Shabbat, or just an everyday Jewish food?
When it comes to holidays, the thing that jumps out is matzah brai, because I never eat it at any other time besides Passover, and there's so many different ways you can make matzah brai. So yeah, I think that's what actually probably makes it taste really good, is that I have it once a year, eat it all week, and then that's it, and then I wait for next year.
I think that's the magic of Passover, is that you have matzah once that week, and or like that entire week, and that's enough.
Absolutely.
Yep. So what is your favorite Yiddish word?
This is a really tough one, but I'm going to choose a topical one, which is nachis. Your congregation might know it from nachat in Hebrew, but in Yiddish, nachis has this incredible warmth. Nachis meaning joy, and it's that particular kind of joy you get from a child or a grandchild. You just feel it. It fills your heart. It's such a beautiful word, nachis. I love it.
Yeah. Mine is ungapatchki. Because it's just so fun to say.
There are so many wonderful words in Yiddish, and so many different, American Jews, we often think of Yiddish as just this funny language. And of course, there are funny elements of Yiddish, but there's so many different tones and ways of expressing things, from the very serious to the filled with romantic love, to the funny, and to the, it just goes on and on. There's a lot to discover in Yiddish.
Mm-hmm. Not just for inappropriate words that grandma and grandpa don't want you to hear.
Well, there are those as well, of course. Some of the best Yiddish curses are the most evocative words. Absolutely.
So what is one fun fact that surprised you that you learned from this project?
I was very surprised to learn from my colleagues. I actually have their book here because I was going back through it, the Gefilte Manifesto. It's a beautiful cookbook from Liz Alpern and Jeffrey Yaskowitz. And they talk about how latkes were originally, it starts out as a cheese fritter in Italy, and then it becomes this recipe with rye and buckwheat, and then it becomes a turnip pancake. And then eventually in the mid-19th century, when potatoes are more widely cultivated, it becomes a potato pancake that's fried. But I just thought that was so fascinating, and as a great example of how something that is so common that we think, oh, it must be this, but then the history opens up our minds to this whole trajectory and all these nuances in the cuisine.
Yeah, no, that is so cool. I'm gonna have to check out their book. I have not read that one yet, so I'm gonna add it to my list.
You should.
So what is the ultimate Jewish food that's going to get us through 2020? What should we be eating?
Okay, the easy answer is matzo ball soup, but I'm going to give a different answer, which is related, which is Schmaltz. They thought it wasn't healthy. It turns out it very well might be healthy. There are actually different levels. Again, I'm quoting Jeffrey Yaskowitz here, of Schmaltz. So the highest is goose Schmaltz, followed by duck Schmaltz, and then chicken Schmaltz, which is the one most people know. But Schmaltz is so versatile. It's so comforting. You throw Schmaltz in basically anything. Apologies to any vegetarians out there. You can't have a vegetarian Schmaltz. But if you can eat the meat-based Schmaltz, it's really good.
Okay, I will. It's my mom would always tell me about how her grandmother would have a little jar of chicken schmaltz. So yeah. I think that will make my mom's day to know that schmaltz is what we need to get us through.
Schmaltz is back. It's back.
All right. So if the viewers at home want to get involved with the project, to actually register and watch and make these recipes, what do they do?
You can go to yivo.org/food and sign up for the class. It's completely free. You can access all the content indefinitely, never get locked out. We also, I should mention, since you said getting involved in the project, we have a Share Your Story initiative, which is if you at home, have a recipe that you remember that is from your family, or maybe a recipe you just heard, you can actually fill out a form on our website. And with your permission, we will add it to the Yivo archives and preserve the recipe for you for future generations. So that's an initiative I'm really excited about, to not just to be able to share all this wonderful content from these scholars and cookbook authors and all these folks, but to hear from everyone out there in the internet what recipes they might have and what information they can share to help us teach this history going forward.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to preserve tradition and history and a love of food. So thank you for inviting us all to be a part of that project, and we'll make sure to share the links.
Thank you so much, Jory. It's great talking with you.
Great talking with you as well. Thank you, and bye.
Bye now.